Hidden within the humid, dense heart of Central America lies a narrow strip of land that quietly changed the course of human history, the Panama Canal. Though it spans just 82 kilometers, this artificial waterway stands as one of the greatest engineering triumphs of all time, an innovation that quite literally redrew the world map. But its impact goes far beyond geography or transportation. It reshaped economies, rewired global trade routes, shifted the balance of military power, and forever altered the destiny of the tiny nation of Panama. To fully grasp the scale of its influence, we have to rewind time to an era when global travel was treacherous and slow, when the only way for ships to journey from the Atlantic to the Pacific Ocean was to brave the long, deadly voyage around the southern tip of South America, navigating the treacherous waters of Cape Horn. The journey was not just long, it was perilous. Violent storms, freezing temperatures, and rugged, uncharted coastlines meant every ship's captain faced immense danger. The maritime world was desperate for a shortcut, and eyes turned toward the narrow Isthmus of Panama, a slim land bridge connecting North and South America, separating two great oceans by only a few dozen miles. From the moment European explorers arrived in the New World, they imagined a passage through this land. As early as the 16th century, Spanish conquistadors floated the idea of a canal, but the sheer scale of the undertaking was too much for the technology of the time. It would take centuries, and a great deal of blood, sweat, and international maneuvering, before the dream could become reality. The first nation to seriously attempt this daunting task was France in the late 1800s, under the leadership of Ferdinand de Lesseps, the famed engineer behind the Suez Canal. His success in Egypt had made him a global celebrity, and he was confident he could replicate his triumph in Panama. But what he and his investors didn't realize was that Panama was nothing like the Egyptian desert. Instead of dry sand and steady terrain, they were met with swampy jungles, steep mountains, relentless rainfall, and swarms of mosquitoes carrying deadly diseases. Workers dropped like flies from malaria and yellow fever, and despite pouring millions into the effort, the project was ultimately doomed. Over 20,000 laborers died, and the French effort collapsed in scandal and financial ruin. The dream of the canal seemed cursed, until another power emerged, hungry for influence and dominance, the United States of America. In the early 20th century, President Theodore Roosevelt, with his signature energy and aggressive foreign policy, saw the canal not just as a commercial opportunity but as a strategic imperative. He believed it was essential for America's military to swiftly move naval fleets between oceans and for U.S. businesses to access international markets more efficiently. But there was a geopolitical obstacle: the land needed to build the canal was controlled by Colombia. So, in a bold and controversial move, the U.S. supported a revolution that led to Panama declaring its independence in 1903. Within days, the new Republic of Panama signed a treaty granting the United States control of the canal zone, effectively giving the U.S. a sovereign corridor cutting across the new country. Construction resumed in 1904, and this time, the Americans came prepared. They approached the project with unmatched coordination and resources, tackling the health crisis first. The U.S. sent Dr. William Gorgas, who implemented massive sanitation campaigns, drained swamps, installed mosquito netting, and fumigated work areas. These efforts drastically reduced disease outbreaks and saved thousands of lives. With the health crisis under control, American engineers began carving through Panama's unforgiving terrain. The most difficult section, the Culebra Cut, required workers to dig through nearly 9 miles of rock and clay. Daily landslides, floods, and heat made it a hellish ordeal. Explosives were used constantly, and workers operated giant steam shovels, cranes, and trains in a scene that resembled industrial warfare more than construction. Instead of following the French plan of digging at sea level, the Americans designed a revolutionary system of locks, massive concrete chambers that would lift ships up to the level of the interior lakes and then lower them back down, making the canal possible without removing mountains of earth. After 10 grueling years of labor, in 1914, the Panama Canal finally opened, just as World War I erupted in Europe. The timing was extraordinary, and though the world was focused on conflict, the canal instantly became a cornerstone of global logistics. Suddenly, what used to take weeks or even months by ship now took a matter of days. A journey from New York to San Francisco was shortened by over 8,000 miles. Ships transporting oil, coal, weapons, food, and commercial goods now had a direct, cost-effective path between oceans. Global shipping was revolutionized, and entire economies were transformed. Military powers also benefited immensely. During World War II, the U.S. used the canal to move fleets quickly between the Atlantic and Pacific, giving them a strategic edge that helped them dominate naval warfare. In peacetime, the canal became a critical cog in the rise of globalization. Goods manufactured in Asia could reach Europe faster. Latin American exports surged. Trade networks expanded and interconnected like never before. But while the world prospered, the people of Panama were largely left out of the equation. The U.S. controlled the canal zone like it was a slice of American territory, complete with fences, guards, and military presence. Panamanians were excluded from the wealth, jobs, and benefits flowing through their own land. Resentment grew, and for decades, tensions simmered. Protests erupted in the 1960s and 1970s, and eventually, the pressure became impossible to ignore. In 1977, U.S. President Jimmy Carter and Panamanian leader Omar Torrijos signed the historic Torrijos-Carter Treaties, which laid out a plan to transfer control of the canal to Panama by the year 2000. It was a symbolic and practical victory for Panamanian sovereignty. On December 31, 1999, the canal was officially handed over to the Panama Canal Authority, and many skeptics feared disaster. But Panama surprised the world. The nation modernized canal operations, improved efficiency, and invested billions in expansion. In 2016, Panama unveiled the Panama Canal Expansion Project, a new set of wider locks that could accommodate much larger vessels, known as New Panamax ships. This doubled the canal's capacity and reinforced its importance in an age of global megashipping. Today, the canal handles around 14,000 ships per year, moves more than 300 million tons of cargo, and generates billions in revenue. It connects over 160 countries and nearly 2,000 ports, acting as a lifeline for international trade. Yet the canal now faces new threats. Climate change is reducing rainfall and affecting water levels in the lakes that feed the locks. In recent years, droughts have forced the Canal Authority to restrict the size and number of ships passing through. There are fears that if conditions worsen, global supply chains could suffer major disruptions. Add to that the rising tensions between world powers, cyber threats, and the ever-growing size of shipping vessels, and it's clear the Panama Canal stands at a crossroads. But despite all these challenges, the canal remains not only operational but indispensable, a shining example of what humanity can achieve when vision, determination, and innovation align. From a dream of conquistadors to a failed French mission, to a symbol of American power, and finally a beacon of Panamanian pride, the Panama Canal is far more than a waterway. It is a living monument to the power of geography, the will of nations, and the enduring desire to connect our world. And as long as ships sail and trade flows, the legacy of the Panama Canal will continue to ripple through the tides of history.